say hello to my guest, Dr. Susan Windham Bannister, here at LSI 2022. Dr. Bannister, thank you for joining me.
It is great to be here. Thanks for inviting me for a conversation.
So we are coming off of our ecosystem panel here. We had Jennifer McCaney and Tiffany Wilson with us, and you were bringing a lot of the knowledge you had. Did a little project in Massachusetts. Why don't let's just open that package a little bit.
That's great. So, one of the real messages that I wanted to give in my remarks today is to blow up completely, I think, what's become an urban legend, that everything that you see in Massachusetts today was always there, number one, and that our ecosystem grew organically the way that Silicon Valley has. And neither of those is really true. The lesson is that an ecosystem can be created with strategic and intentional investing, and you're really getting all of the members of the cluster, and we tend to use those terms interchangeably now, they're really quite different, to come together. So, maybe I'll take the credit for being the architect and coming up with the right strategy, but I have to give all of my colleagues in Massachusetts credit for buying in and being willing to share expertise and exchange value, and we're all proud of our success story.
Sue, as we were getting to know each other and preparing to come and have our panel at LSI, I just want to play back the reaction that I had when you began to tell me, because I was very excited how much I've enjoyed Boston. I see the Boston, Cambridge, I don't even distinguish them. It's just this compact unity. And, my son is at school in Northeastern, so I'm a little bit of, a partisan in the whole thing. But it's so different than Silicon Valley and Stanford, and just getting around Stanford, you never dream of going over to Berkeley in the same day. And I thought, it's just always been this way. Oh, Boston's so lucky. And how did you disavow me of that?
It was very easy to say, and a quick shout out to your son at Northeastern, which has become a really, really strong player in our life sciences ecosystem, great bioengineering programs, a lot going on there. So, and again, but a school that you would not have thought of right off the bat, right, as being a big part of the ecosystem. So let's take just Kendall Square, which I think is what everyone thinks of.
It's my favorite spot.
We've just, everything's gotten shrunken down into Kendall Square, but it's a good example. There are a lot of things in Kendall Square that are unique to Kendall Square. But over its evolution, Kendall Square was a light industrial community, a real dive. Let me just put it the way it was. But MIT was sitting there. And, because there was a lot of warehouse space, it was relatively unused. Some of our young biotech companies started there. But if you took a stroll through Kendall Square, so much of what is there now was not there. So you go back and you'll walk past the Cambridge Innovation Center, which was not back in Kendall Square in the day and has housed many, many companies, not just life sciences companies, but a lot of startups. One of the things I'm very proud about, because the Life Sciences Center gave the seed money as well as 3 rounds of expansion grants to Lab Central, which was at the time, in 2013, the first of its kind co-working space. And it is an ecosystem in and of itself, but it's right up the street from MIT. And not only do you have many, many companies there, but you have a lot of large companies and institutional investors who are sponsoring those companies. And so they spend a lot of time. Since 2013, there have been about 200 graduating companies from Lab Central. 70% have stayed in Kendall Square. So that's 140 new companies sitting in Kendall Square that have created several thousand jobs. And Lab Central, just Lab Central, this co-working space, has attracted the 4th highest venture investment in the US. So not a city, not a region, but this amazing place. And so that's been a big contribution. So that's an example of the type of infrastructure that this public-private partnership created. As you're walking through, a lot of tax credits that were given to large companies like Biogen and Sanofi. And I have to tell you, as I was walking over for our conversation, I ran into someone whose company was in M2D2, which is a medical device specific incubator that we gave a lot of money for expansion. And he said that his company got money from the Life Sciences Center because we did a lot of investing in early stage companies, and he took interns from our internship program. So we talked about that as actually creating pathways into the industry. Young people need to really know what they can do in this industry. It goes beyond maybe just being a lab person, but being an engineer, being a marketing person, being a finance person, being in regulatory science. So all of this was very much about building this ecosystem. And because our approach was a little bit different, so we've talked today on our panel about some place-based ecosystems. So really taking a geographic parcel and saying, we're going to construct an ecosystem here. Of course, we're going to attach onto other members of our cluster. Or Mars up in Mars Bio, that's up in Toronto. These are place-based. We were a statewide initiative, and so we really did, kind of have to think about not just what we were doing for individual clusters, but how are we weaving them all together through incentives, through a sense of we, and a sense of collectivity, through partnerships and collaborations, sort of pushing people to really work together. And so it was a very interesting experiment for us. That's really what it was. Could we transform ourselves from a research hub to a real innovation hub? And I'm going to be honest, I think we exceeded our wildest expectations. But this really notion that it was always there, all the capital, the workforce, the infrastructure, that it was always there. It really wasn't. It's taken a lot of work and some strategic investment. And I say all that because I want to encourage all of the other up-and-coming ecosystems. We need them. Patients need them. That's why we all get up every day, right? It's the mission of how do we do things that bring therapies, cures, to the market for the patients who need them. Or health producing or health restoring or health maintaining technologies. Ecosystems do that. Ecosystems are really what enable that. It's not the cluster. It's not all of the stuff, if you will. It's how does it come together? How does it mutually reinforce? How does it leverage? So it's a very nice image that all of this was in Massachusetts, but a lot of it we've built together.
Love your image of the weaving, and you described your role earlier as you were an architect. You got to build a house. You had the privilege of getting to live in it. It got built fast enough. So can that be replicated? Can other places learn how to do that?
It can. Now, they may not replicate it to the letter. It's not necessarily turnkey. We had a strategy. We had a framework. And we understood that the cluster wasn't enough. Elements of that cluster had been there for a long time. There's some who like to say, well, if you have MIT and Harvard at opposite ends of the same street, this will happen. And no, it will not happen. It is replicable. I think what's great is that each of these up-and-coming innovation hubs is finding its way to where are its strengths. So it will be an innovation hub for X. It may be we will really be one of the premier innovation ecosystems for cell therapies. Maybe we will be one for all of the advances in biomanufacturing. We will be where AI comes together with the engineering solutions and the biology and the chemistry. So to be determined exactly what these ecosystems will look like, but the principle is simply that to enable the life cycle of innovation, which starts, with the discovery and then moves all the way through the translation, the development, and then the commercialization, and you want to sustain it, you want it to stick, you need the ecosystem because you need all the parts of what innovation needs along that life cycle. I think Israel is a very excellent example. Startup nation. but Israel wants to be scale-up nation. They don't want to be a net exporter of entrepreneurs all around the world. And so one of the things I've been working on recently, because I've tried to take some of this, what did we learn in Massachusetts about what works, and then and put some of that in the hands then of other developing ecosystems, good clusters, but developing ecosystems. And I've been working recently with Greater Los Angeles. In Greater Los Angeles, I have really found, I think, another cluster with a tremendous amount of potential to become
Tell us more about
fantastic. So if I can tell you a little bit more about that, and I'm always happy to go back to Massachusetts, which I love, but Massachusetts is sort of well-established and chugging along, and in the spirit of emerging medtech, that's why we're all here, an emerging innovation ecosystem is Greater Los Angeles. And this is a public-private partnership. So the County of Los Angeles had a vision that Los Angeles could look more like the Bay Area and San Diego, not so much in exactly what it was doing, but it too could be recognized in California and around the world as a leading innovation ecosystem. And of course, you have very strong tech and lifestyle issues there, as well as the great science and of course, medtech. So a number of the big players that are in Greater Los Angeles looked up and said, yes, we would love to have an ecosystem here so we can stop going to San Diego or going to the Bay Area or to New York or to Boston, truly to build out, what we need for our success, be it a young company or one of the industry leaders. So Amgen and City of Hope and Cedars-Sinai and Alexandria and LARTA, which is a great advisory group for early stage companies, and UCLA have come together as sort of the founding sponsors a couple of years ago to send this very strong signal that, look at us now, we're really coming together. And this initiative is being led by an organization called BioLA, which, like the Life Sciences Center in Massachusetts, we heart everyone. We're really here to look at where the gaps are and how do we bring all these great players and resources together to play well on the sandbox or play well on the beach, but to really understand that we can achieve this vision with a collaborative spirit and a good value exchange. And, the geography in LA is tough. It is very, very spread out, and that traffic is not a myth. But this notion of how do we use technology? We've learned a lot during the pandemic about how we work virtually. How do we think of ourselves as an ecosystem and not, well, we've got UCLA over here and, USC over here and this university here and that university there. I mean, it's how do we really collaborate? How do we partner? How do we really work more closely with our industry partners? How do we come together to support our very vibrant community of startups? And money is beginning to come in now. Some very, very interesting reports which have shown how much investment is coming into LA. And since we are here at Emerging MedTech, I should say that a recent study by a group called Move It, which is in Austin, looked at 85 cities around the world, and Greater LA was number 4 on their list of leaders in medtech. And they were looking at the number of startup companies, the number of mature companies, the angel and VC investing that was going on, the workforce. So here's an area, here's a cluster with a great story to tell, and they haven't integrated it. They haven't kind of come together and said, yeah, wait, we are a community. We're an ecosystem. We're not a group of just separate resources and players. It's very exciting to see what's happening.
You talk about these things. It sounds like maybe the sponsors, these early members of BioLA, that they're sort of the representatives of the cluster that are the ones sort of taking that first step.
Yes.
of coming together. We'll begin to form some of this connective tissue, and then how do we make that grow and have it be organic and have more people join in? Is that one of the, we talked about translation. You used the T word during our panel.
Absolutely.
So that's another element of translation that leads to ecosystem, that vibrancy that we need.
Absolutely. You've got to have an ecosystem. I look at the ecosystem as a platform on which innovation sits. And we know that innovation goes through stages. So how do we have all the right ingredients? You can think of it as a platform, a highway, so that that process can keep moving forward from one stage to the next, to the next. And then if everything is there, it sticks. No one is looking up to say, well, we really, other than getting into different markets, but we don't really need to move major bases of our operations because everything that we need is right here. So part of it is attracting more venture capital. Part of it is building out a good mentoring network, because there are a lot of experts between the academic institutions and the existing companies that are there. And the reason that these founding sponsors were very keen on this idea of really building out an ecosystem is because they see all of these resources. It's not easy even for them to access the resources, as they are saying. It would be nice not to have to be on airplanes quite as much, but they see that the potential is there. And they've seen places like Massachusetts just sort of really explode. And they would like to be part of that, because I think, as we all know, innovation now is coming from these little companies, these startups. And as Johnson & Johnson said to me at one point when they were coming to Massachusetts, we are a whale. And all of us, the big companies, the whales, need to swim where there is a lot of food for us. So we have to be now in these communities with a lot of startup activity, but it's well coalesced. So these companies have a chance to grow there, and we can come and we can be part. So bringing these big companies in, and these big organizations, the big medical centers, and now connecting into the startup community has been a really big part. And the sustainability comes when there's a great program for internships that is being run by BioLA. Already BioLA has brought together a lot of different groups to work on joint activities, or even to go after big grants together as a team. And AdvaMed is coming to LA in 2023. So that, and that, again, a lot of advocacy on the part of BioLA to say, listen, look what's going on here. You should come and have AdvaMed. So it is serving, BioLA is serving as a source of some investment, a convener and a facilitator, and creating the incentives to bring everyone together, and pointing at the areas that need investment, and where BioLA, out of its budget, can make these investments. It is going and advocating with the County of LA to say you need to put money into infrastructure here or there. BioLA was a great touch point for biolabs when biolabs came and did its version of Lab Central in Greater LA. So it's weaving it together. It's making that quilt that we hope will provide a great platform in Los Angeles for some time to come.
Listening to you talk about these different elements coming together, one of the sort of bumper stickers early on was bench to bedside.
Yes.
Just that was translation, bench to bedside. Well, can you break that down? And I think that we kind of stayed at those bookends, but now it's really translation, fundamental science to ideas to products. That's a way of translation. But I think what we're discovering in a lot of the companies you're talking about are, we need innovation on that other phase of translation.
Exactly.
Products to markets that you can access. And once you can access them, you can scale. And the whales got food.
Absolutely.
Let them swim.
And then it all comes back into the delivery system. Absolutely. It's really a great question. So, I had mentioned earlier that innovation is, I like to call it a team sport. And it is.
I say it's joint force operations, but team sport, probably
You know
more
what?
people.
But it requires all the different pieces. So one of the things that you mentioned that has often a missing ingredient in this translation and development process are the academic institutions, which is where it all starts. That's where the development begins. But one of the big things we had to do in Massachusetts, and I see this happening in Greater Los Angeles as well, is more of the academic institutions in Massachusetts, other than MIT, realizing they have a big role to play that goes beyond basic science and goes beyond training workforce. It's like, wait a minute, startup companies emerge from us. We license out a lot of our work. I mean, we can support the translation and development. We have experts here who can help with that. And a big transformation in Massachusetts in terms of our ecosystem has been the medical centers and the universities coming to the table and saying, we better understand now the role that we play. What's the value exchange with the ecosystem? We get it. We understand our role and a purpose that we play. And I see that happening in Greater Los Angeles. I see UCLA. I'd like to see some of the other universities really embracing this role of the academic institution as partner in translation and in development and a contributor to commercialization at the end of the day. But I see a lot of that realization, and I think one of the reasons that we have Cedars-Sinai and City of Hope sitting at the table as founding sponsors of BioLA is they have come to that realization. You know, Cedars has a great incubator right now.
Yes, they do.
And the companies that are there are all companies whose products and tools will go directly back into the delivery system. And it's part of the reason that they're incubating there at Cedars. Cedars is almost a test bed for what they're doing. And it's a great way of them hearing, this is great. This is how this would be used. So these are the features that it needs to have. Or hearing, we would never use that in a million years, and that's a good thing for an entrepreneur to hear. So this is something else that makes me excited about Greater Los Angeles. I think that their universities, as Stanford has done for many years, you know, up in the Bay Area, are re-envisioning themselves and the role that they play, and are excited. And BioLA gave them a way to come in and connect with the ecosystem in a way that they hadn't necessarily connected before.
Susan, Windham Bannister, take one, marker.